When men speak of Troy, their first words are often of Achilles, swift-footed son of Thetis, whose wrath shook the plains and whose death became the sorrow of Greece. Achilles was the spear, the unstoppable fury, the glory that blazed too bright to last. Yet when his flame was extinguished, it was not strength alone that guided the Greeks to victory. From the shadow of Achilles rose another figure, Odysseus of Ithaca, the man of twists and turns. Odysseus's power lay in his mind, his cunning, his patience, his unyielding will. He was the tongue that could sway kings, the hand that devised the wooden horse, the mind that outwitted gods and monsters alike. And where Achilles' tale ends with death, Odysseus' tale begins with wandering. After 10 long years, the great walls of Troy had finally crumbled, not by brute force, but by a trick. Odysseus, clever beyond all measure, had whispered the idea of the wooden horse into the ears of his fellow kings. Troy, with its towering walls built by the gods themselves, remained unbroken. The Greeks had exhausted their strength. Achilles was dead, Ajax had fallen, and morale was crumbling. Something more than brute force was needed. It was Odysseus, the man of twists and turns, who conceived the stratagem that would end the war. Instead of attacking, he turned to deception. He ordered a great horse to be built, vast as a tower, hollow within, fashioned of wood. It would be a gift to the Trojans, a supposed sacred offering to Athena, goddess of wisdom, to ensure safe passage home for the Greeks. But inside the horse, Odysseus hid the best of the Greek warriors, himself, Menelaus, Diomedes, and others, while the main army pretended to sail away, leaving the horse behind on the beach. When dawn came, the Trojans found the massive horse. Some urged to burn it, others to throw it into the sea. Sinon, a Greek left behind, tricked them further. Sinon was a relative of Odysseus, sometimes described as his kinsman or ally. He was chosen to act as the sacrificial decoy in Odysseus's cunning plan. The Trojans found him tied and beaten, as if abandoned by his fellow Greeks. He claimed the horse was sacred, that it must be brought into the city to win Athena's favor. But Laocoon, a Trojan priest of Poseidon, famously warned them not to trust it. He urged the Trojans to either burn the horse or throw it into the sea, insisting it was a trick of war. To prove his point, he hurled a spear into the horse's side. The hollow belly echoed with the sound of hidden warriors. Yet fate kept the Trojans blind. To silence him, the gods, Athena, sent 2 giant sea serpents from the waves. The monsters slithered ashore and crushed Laocoon and his 2 sons in their coils before dragging them into the sea. The Trojans interpreted this not as punishment for ignoring his warning, but as divine proof that Laocoon had offended the gods by striking the sacred offering. Laocoon's death sealed Troy's fate, believing the horse was truly holy. The Trojans dragged it inside their walls, unleashing their own destruction. That night, Troy celebrated, wine flowing as their enemies sailed away. In the silence of midnight, while Troy slept, the hatch in the horse opened. Odysseus and his warriors crept out, slaughtered the guards, and threw open the gates. The Greek army, which had only hidden beyond the horizon, sailed back under cover of night. They poured into the city, burning, killing, destroying. Priam fell at the altar, Cassandra was dragged from the temple, and Troy, the proud city, was consumed by fire. But even as the Greeks rejoiced, the seeds of Odysseus's suffering were already sown. For pride clung to him like a second skin, and his sharp tongue mocked the gods one too many times. Above the seas, Poseidon, lord of storms, earthquakes, and horses, swore that the trickster, king of Ithaca, would not reach home easily. The journey back home began, but soon Odysseus's fleet was scattered by storms. Odysseus's ship landed on a strange island wrecked. On this strange island, his men encountered the lotus eaters, who offered them golden flowers sweeter than honey. The lotus eaters were a group of people that lived on a strange, dreamy island where lotus plants grew in abundance. These lotuses were not ordinary flowers or fruits, they were magical plants. Whoever ate them forgot their home, their duties, and their desire to leave. The people who lived there survived by eating the lotus daily, living in a state of blissful forgetfulness. Whoever tasted forgot home, forgot duty, forgot even their own names. Odysseus had to drag his weeping companions back to the ships, binding them to the benches until they remembered who they were. And they continued the journey back home. Then came the land of the Cyclopes. Odysseus and his men, reckless with hunger, entered the cave of Polyphemus. Polyphemus was a cyclops, meaning a giant with a single eye in the middle of his forehead, and the son of Poseidon. Trapped inside, they watched in horror as the monster smashed their comrades against the stone and devoured them raw. But Odysseus, ever cunning, offered Polyphemus wine and told him his name was Nobody. When the Cyclops fell into a drunken sleep, they drove a burning stake into his single eye. His screams shook the island. Other Cyclopes rushed to his aid. But when he cried, "Nobody has hurt me," they left him. Odysseus escaped by clinging to the bellies of sheep. But pride betrayed him once more. As they sailed away, he shouted his true name across the waves. Polyphemus cursed him, calling on his father Poseidon to make Odysseus wander for years, losing all his men before ever reaching Ithaca. The god of the sea listened, which led their ship to land in Aeolia, the island where Aeolus was, the god of wind in this floating island. Aeolus was the god, or king, of the winds, who lived on the floating island of Aeolia. Zeus had given him authority to control all the winds, keeping them locked away or releasing them at will. When Odysseus and his companions landed on Aeolus's island, during his long journey home from Troy, Aeolus welcomed him and his men with hospitality and feasting for a full month. When it was time for Odysseus to leave, Aeolus wanted to help him return safely to Ithaca. To aid him, Aeolus gave Odysseus a bag made of oxhide, tied tightly, with silver thread. Inside the bag, Aeolus had sealed all the dangerous winds, storms, hurricanes, tempests, that could drive Odysseus's ship off course. He left free only the gentle west wind to blow the ship straight toward Ithaca. Ithaca's shores were already in sight when curiosity and greed doomed them. Odysseus guarded the bag carefully, but as Ithaca's shores came into sight, he fell asleep from exhaustion. His men, curious and greedy, thought the bag contained gold or treasure. They opened it. At once, the imprisoned winds burst free, unleashing a storm that drove them all the way back to Aeolia. When Odysseus begged Aeolus for help again, Aeolus refused. Aeolus, angered, refused to help them again. After storms and starvation, the men staggered to the island of Circe. Circe was a powerful sorceress, or enchantress, the daughter of Helios, the sun god, and the ocean nymph Perse, which made her both divine and magical. Odysseus and his men landed on Circe's island, after Aeolus refused to render help again for the journey home. Circe was known for her ability to use potent herbs and spells. When some of Odysseus's men visited her palace, she gave them food and drink laced with magic. After they ate, she transformed them into animals, usually pigs. Odysseus, on hearing this, was going to confront her. Before confronting her, Odysseus was aided by Hermes, who gave him a magical herb called moly, which protected him from Circe's enchantments. Hermes was the messenger of the gods, son of Zeus and Maia. He was also the god of travelers, trickery, speed, and guidance of souls to the underworld. Clever, swift, and cunning, Hermes often acted as a helper of heroes. When Circe tried to bewitch him, the spell failed. Odysseus then threatened her with his sword. Amazed by his courage and resistance, Circe released his men from her spell and became an ally to Odysseus. Odysseus and his crew stayed with Circe for a full year, feasting and resting under her hospitality. Circe fell in love with him, and for a year he stayed feasting, drinking, forgetting time. His men, weary and hollow-eyed, begged him to leave. Circe told Odysseus to visit the underworld because she knew that his journey home to Ithaca would be filled with deadly dangers, and the only way he could survive them was to seek knowledge from the dead. Circe relented and told Odysseus he must journey to the underworld to seek the wisdom of the dead prophet Tiresias. Circe explained that Tiresias' shade, ghost, alone had prophetic wisdom about how Odysseus could return safely. Tiresias was a legendary blind prophet of Thebes, famous for his wisdom, foresight, and connection to the gods of the underworld. He was granted the gift of prophecy by the gods and, though blind, could see truths hidden from others. And he was dead already, which made them journey to the underworld. Circe explained that Tiresias' ghost alone had Prophetic wisdom about how Odysseus could return safely. Knowledge of how to appease the gods, especially Poseidon, who was furious at him. So Odysseus and his companions left Circe's island, thanking her for hospitality and kindness towards them. The journey to the underworld began. Following Circe's directions, they sailed westward over the great Oceanus. They traveled to a place beyond the known world, where the sun never shines and eternal mist lingers. Eventually, they reached the dark shores of the land of the Cimmerians, a people who live in perpetual twilight near the entrance to the underworld. There, Odysseus found the place Circe described, a spot where the rivers Phlegethon and Cocytus flow into the river Acron, the boundary of the underworld. Darkness swallowed them as Odysseus poured blood into the earth to summon the shades. Ghosts swarmed, whispering of grief and doom. Tiresias appeared and warned him to not harm the cattle of Helios, the sun god. Accept suffering, but endure, only then would he return home. Odysseus also saw the shade of his mother, who had died from sorrow during his absence, and the fallen warriors of Troy. Tears burned his face as he fled back to the living. Back on the seas, temptation and terror awaited. The sirens sang promises of hidden knowledge, voices like golden chains. The sirens were mythical creatures who lived on rocky islands in the sea, half-woman, half-bird beings. What made them dangerous wasn't their looks, it was their song. The sirens sang songs so sweet and irresistible that sailors who heard them would steer their ships toward the sound. But the islands were surrounded by jagged rocks. Ships would crash, and the sailors would perish. Circe warned Odysseus about the sirens before he left her island. She advised him to plug his men's ears with beeswax so they would not hear the song. Odysseus, however, was curious and wanted to hear the sirens without being destroyed. He ordered his men to tie him tightly to the mast of the ship. He commanded them not to release him, no matter how much he begged. As they sailed past the sirens, the song filled the air, and Odysseus went nearly mad with desire to join them. He shouted and begged to be untied, but his men ignored him and rowed harder. Thanks to his clever plan, the ship passed safely, and they survived the deadly lure. Then came the deadly straits. On one side, Scylla, a six-headed monster who snatched sailors from the decks to crunch them between her teeth. Scylla was a sea monster who lived on one side of a narrow strait of water, directly opposite another danger. The whirlpool monster Charybdis. Odysseus had to choose which side to sail closer to Scylla or Charybdis. Circe had warned him earlier that it was better to lose a few men to Scylla than risk the whole ship being swallowed by Charybdis. As Odysseus's ship approached the strait, he followed Circe's advice and steered closer to Scylla's side. He told his men nothing, fearing panic. Suddenly, Scylla struck, her 6 heads darting down to snatch 6 of Odysseus's men screaming from the deck. Odysseus could only watch helplessly as they were devoured alive. It was one of the most painful moments of his journey, but the rest of the crew survived. Exhausted and traumatized, the survivors just wanted rest. But then came the deadly temptation. When they spotted Thrinacia, Odysseus begged his men not to land there, remembering the prophecies. But his helmsman, Eurylochus, argued that they needed to rest and eat. Odysseus reluctantly agreed but made them swear not to harm the sacred cattle of the sun god. Thrinacia is described as a beautiful, radiant island surrounded by calm seas and bathed in sunlight. It was sacred to Helios, the god of the sun, who pastured his immortal cattle and sheep there. Odysseus wanted to avoid the island, but his men, exhausted, forced him to stop at Thrinacia. He made them swear not to harm the cattle, and they stayed while unfavorable winds kept them trapped for weeks. When their food ran out, while Odysseus slept, his men slaughtered and ate some of Helios's sacred cattle. The sun god was enraged and demanded punishment from Zeus. After they left the island, Zeus sent a massive storm that destroyed the ship. All of Odysseus's men drowned. Only Odysseus survived, clinging to wreckage that drifted toward Calypso's island. Calypso was a nymph, a minor goddess of nature and the daughter of the Titan Atlas, the one who held up the sky. She lived alone on a remote island called Ogygia, a paradise far removed from the world of mortals and gods. After Zeus's storm destroyed Odysseus's ship, for his crew's sin on Helios's island, the waves carried him to Ogygia. The nymph Calypso, daughter of the Titan Atlas, found him washed ashore. She nursed him back to health and fell deeply in love with him. She kept him there for 7 years, offering him immortality, if he would stay as her husband. Though Ogygia was paradise, Odysseus's heart longed for home and his wife, Penelope. The goddess Athena, on seeing this, took pity on Odysseus and pleaded with Zeus to release him from Calypso's island. Zeus sent Hermes, the messenger god, to deliver the divine order. It is not Odysseus's fate to remain with you. Let him go, for he must return home. Calypso was heartbroken but obeyed. She helped Odysseus build a raft, gave him food and water, and watched him sail away, knowing she would never see him again. For 17 days, Odysseus sailed smoothly, guided by the stars, heading east toward home. But fate stirred again. Poseidon, still furious that Odysseus had blinded his son Polyphemus, saw him on the open sea. In rage, Poseidon unleashed a massive storm, shattering Odysseus's raft and tossing him through the waves. Odysseus barely survived. He clung to broken pieces of the raft, fighting the sea for 2 days and nights. As he struggled against the waves, a sea goddess named Leucothea took pity on him. Leucothea was once a mortal woman named Ino, the daughter of Cadmus, the founder of Thebes, and sister of Semele, mother of Dionysus. After a tragic series of events, she was transformed into a sea goddess. She appeared in the form of a seabird and offered him her magical veil, telling him to wrap it around his chest for protection and swim to safety. Odysseus obeyed, though reluctantly, and after more storms and exhaustion, he finally saw land. The land he reached wasn't Ithaca yet, it was Scheria, home of the Phaeacians, a noble and sea-loving people blessed by the gods. Odysseus collapsed naked and half dead on the shore. He was found by Princess Nausicaa, daughter of King Alcinous, who helped him reach the palace. The Phaeacians, amazed by his story, treated him with honor. The Phaeacians offered Odysseus what he'd longed for, a safe voyage home. They gave him a magnificent ship, gifts of gold, and food. He finally fell asleep as the ship cut through the waves, faster than any mortal vessel. While he slept, the Phaeacians quietly docked in Ithaca, laid him gently on the shore, and sailed away. When Odysseus awoke, he was finally home but didn't recognize it at first. Athena appeared to him, disguised, and revealed that he was indeed in Ithaca. She helped him plan his return in secret, setting the stage for the final, powerful reunion with Penelope and his battle against the suitors. Athena cloaked him in the guise of a beggar. Only his faithful hound, Argos, recognized him before dying at his feet. Argos was Odysseus's loyal dog, the one he raised, and trained as a puppy before leaving for the Trojan War. Penelope, cunning like her husband, delayed the suitors by weaving a shroud by day and unweaving it by night. At last she declared she would marry the man who could string Odysseus's great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads. One by one the suitors failed. The beggar took the bow, strung it with ease, and loosed an arrow straight through. Thunder shook the hall as Odysseus cast off his disguise, with Telemachus and Athena beside him. He rained arrows upon the suitors. The hall ran red with their blood. Still Penelope doubted, wary of trickery. She tested him. "Our bed, if you are truly Odysseus, tell me of it." He answered, "No man could move our bed. Its frame is living olive rooted in the earth." At this, Penelope's heart broke with joy. She embraced him at last, husband and wife reunited. Lived to an old age, Odysseus sacrificed to Poseidon, to make peace with the god, and then died peacefully by the shore as the sea breeze filled the air. A death from the sea meaning a calm, natural passing. Thus ended the wanderings of Odysseus, the man of many sorrows, the man of many turns. Not the strongest, not the swiftest, but the most enduring of men. His tale became a song for all time, of pride and punishment, of loss and longing, of the unbreakable will that carried him home. Subscribe, share, comment, like.